recorded live from Studio 12A in sunny Phoenix, Arizona. You're listening to the Josh and Friends Podcast.
Thank you for tuning in to the Josh and Friends Podcast. I am your host. My name is Josh. And this week, I have a very special guest to the show. I first met this person at a party for our apartment complex back in 2012. And we quickly discovered that we were both very new to Arizona. She soon became a fixture within our small group of friends. As time went on, she eventually moved out of the complex, bought a house, but we still kept in touch through means of social media. But fast forward about a decade later, and she has a new husband, a whole new outlook on life, as well as a tell-all book about her struggles with alcohol and sobriety. So please, help me welcome to the show the author of Strong Roots, Wayward Soul, my friend, the one and only, Mrs. Christy Hughes. Woo! Christy! How you doing?
Yes. Good.
Awesome, it's good to see you.
It's been a really long time.
Yeah, yeah.
A really long time.
Yeah, really long time. You look good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm aging in reverse, I like to say. So,
yeah.
yes.
Yeah, no, you look fantastic. So where are you right now?
So right at this moment, I am in Hamilton, Texas, which most of your listeners will not have heard of, but it's in central Texas, so halfway between Dallas, Fort Worth, and Austin, kind of west of Waco. Yeah.
Waco, we all know Waco.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
David Koresh, Chip and Joanna, whichever one you want to choose. But
right,
yes.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So now you're originally from Texas.
Yes.
Are you originally from that area or?
No, I'm from the Dallas Fort Worth area originally. Grew up in Arlington, was then down in Houston like after college, and I moved to Arizona from Houston. And then when I left and came back to Texas, I moved back to the Dallas Fort Worth area with my now husband. And then about 2 weeks ago, we got this little 880 square foot cottage delivered to the land, and
whoa,
that's where I'm at. I work from home, so I can work
awesome.
out here in the middle of nowhere.
What? So how many weeks ago?
Well, it came in March.
Really?
St. Patrick's Day. So
wow.
That's an easy way to remember it. It came
wow.
in St.
That's kind of
Day,
cool. So it's like a
it
little
took a while to
cottage.
get everything settled, but yeah, it's like a bigger tiny home.
That's awesome. I love those little tiny homes. Some of those are so cool. Yeah.
Yeah. So I love it. We have 20 acres. So
wow.
I'm like a farmer now, Josh. You didn't know that about me, I don't think. But I'm a farmer now.
That's awesome.
I'm a hippie farmer.
You're right. Yeah, you're gonna have a commune and like all these like hippies living on your place, you know.
I do yoga on the deck, and then I go and I feed the chickens, and then I tend to my garden.
This sounds just like the Christy that I used to know.
Exactly.
Yeah. So now we are going to get into your book, which I read is awesome. So yeah, there you go. Boom. Yep. We both
I have a certain
here.
page marked just in case.
Awesome. So we're definitely going to get into that. But first, I want to talk about how we actually met. And, I guess that kind of goes into it. But now, when did you move to Arizona?
So I moved to Arizona in October of 2012. So yeah, I got the job with PetSmart, and I relocated for the job. And I got the apartment pretty quickly after that, because I was in like corporate housing for a couple of weeks, and then I moved into the Pietra, was it?
Yeah. I think they've changed the name or something.
Yeah.
But yeah. No. So yeah, I was right before that. I came out in late 2011. So we kind of, that's kind of like how we bonded at first, because we were both new. So that's the one good thing I would say about Arizona is it's very it's a, what do they call that? Like a state where everybody moves and
like transient. Or
there you go.
something.
Yeah, like,
and lots of transplants. Like everybody I worked with were transplants,
right?
And then everybody I met. I think in my first few months there, when I was meeting people, I met one native Phoenician and learned the word Phoenician. But
right, yeah, no, and it's funny because, well, a lot of the people I know are from Chicago. There's so many people from Chicago here, but yeah, so it's one of those places where everybody wants to meet people because nobody knows anybody because everybody moved here from somewhere else, you know.
Yeah.
So you said that
I knew one person and that was it, and so. And her and I weren't even that close. Like, she lived in Gilbert. So I just...
Oh, yeah?
It was me.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
and the dog.
Yeah. So we was that Pietra place or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
the
it's
apartment.
Yeah. It's kind of like one of those... I didn't know of these kind of places like in Washington. They don't exist. I mean, well, at least they didn't back then. Maybe they do now, but it still doesn't make sense, you know, with like kind of like resortish kind of like style living, big palm trees everywhere and like a pool and, you know, it's just kind of like that vibe where it's like, hey man, we're having a party. You should come down to the center. And we're like, what? Like free alcohol. And I'm like, what? You know, like, I'm sure that's what got you there because that's what got me there. I mean,
they had me at free alcohol.
I would never show up to that place to, hey, you want to come meet like some strangers? And I'm like, no, like, why would I want to do that? But we're having free wine and beer, and I'm like, oh, okay. Well, you just piqued my interest now. So yeah, I went to a couple of those. Yeah. So
and then it's like, okay, do I go in and just like grab my glass of wine and jet?
Yeah, right.
Or do I kind of hang around and give it a chance?
Yeah.
Or, you know, do I have plans after this? Okay, I'm going to hit the free booze and then I'm going to go out. So,
yeah.
I don't know that I ever went to any of those with the intention of actually mingling with anybody.
Right.
But then I mingled with you, so it was good.
But yeah, that's...
Because here we are.
Yeah, so, yeah, exactly. So now you said that... I came up to you because I was probably, you know, just kind of like, well, let's get this party started. I mean, like, we're just all standing around kind of like, it's like kind of like a high school dance where you're just kind of standing there and like, all right, I guess we'll go like talk to people. So, and what did you say? All right. So you said that I came up to you, but it was so funny the way you described how I came up to you.
Well, so the way I remember it, and maybe we should consult the book because I don't know, that's where the memory is. But so if anyone reads the book and I got the memory wrong, then this is probably more accurate than what I'm about to say. But I remember like we were almost like back to back more, like you were leaning against the pool table. And so I think I went to get I remember going to get a glass of wine off the little kitchen counter thing. And I was kind of standing there, and you were, and I don't know if you turned around and like almost bumped into me. It felt like there was an almost collision kind of thing that happened. And then you smiled, and I said in the book, you had the widest smile. And I was like, that guy has a nice smile. Yeah. And then I went on to say that we had a platonic relationship.
Right.
Just friends.
Yeah.
But I remember the smile and the spiky hair, and so the rest is history.
I love the I think it was like in parentheses or quote marks. You're like, with the ease of a politician, and I'm like, oh, okay. It's like a how you doing? Like,
yes, I'm Josh. He said, extending his hand with the ease of a politician. I quickly learned that he was a Seattle transplant who had lived in the apartment complex for some time, bonding over talk of football and music. It was the beginning of a fast friendship and another opening to a wider circle of friends. Because then I met all of your coworkers, which was great.
Right. Yeah,
well, it was great, and it was, it was wild.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, then we would, I don't know, go to some dive karaoke bars, or I think we went. Yeah, we went to a few different places. But yeah, it was all ended up the same way. But, yeah, no. So in our group, we would always go back. We'd always like, I would invite everybody to my place, and I had this like little studio, but it was like the coolest little studio that I've ever seen. Like I was like, I hate studios, but like the way this was built, it was kind of like a cool little studio, and we would always like, have drinks up there and everything. But, you actually introduced me to Tito's. Like, I'd never even heard of Tito's. It apparently exploded after that. I don't know. Because everybody started talking about it after that. I was like, oh, okay. You're like, Tito's.
Texan vodka. I mean, come on.
But yeah, so anyway, we had some pretty good times back then, from what we could both remember. I know.
I feel like you would be very proud of me. I don't know. Oh, you're not going to be able to see it. I have a record player.
Really?
I felt like I needed to brag a little bit on the fact that I have a record player.
Is this like a new purchase, or is this a...
Not too new, but I just feel like I have maybe lived up to Josh's expectations that I have vinyl in my living room.
That's awesome. I was actually...
Because that's what I remember about the apartment. Well, and of course now it's like
Right. Yeah, no, I love vinyl. And you know what's funny is I always love, vinyl's making a comeback, which is good for the music business, but I'm always like, I'm such a nerdy collector guy where I always want to collect stuff that was from the era. So like vinyl to me, like 60s, 70s, mid 80s, right? And then it goes to tapes. So you got like tapes, right? And then it goes CDs, in the 90s. And I don't know what now, like we collect MP3s. I don't know what people do. Anyway, yeah.
Whatever's on my phone, I suppose.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So, but yeah, I was gonna talk about that, but you had these kind of like crayfish parties like they used to have, like
crawfish. Yes.
Crawfish parties. Yeah.
Yes. You came to a crawfish boil. Yeah. So that was the part I missed most about moving from Houston to Phoenix was that, it's a landlocked state. And so, I ended up somehow through work having a connection with people who do like a Louisiana company that could ship crawfish to my house. And so I had a vendor who would like help me get crawfish to my house. Oh. And I had always gone to crawfish boils. I had never actually done it myself. And there's a lot to it, a lot more than I ever realized. But I did it every year. Some poor soul would get suckered into helping me and like getting them out of the boiling hot water and all that stuff. And you spread them out on the table and crack them open and you get like, a dime-sized piece of meat for all the work that you just put into cracking off the shell.
Right, yeah.
That backyard was amazing. It was like the perfect entertaining backyard.
It was a cool little backyard.
Yeah.
And
that was once I got the house, because I was in the apartment for 6 months and I was like, I got to get out of here. I have a 60-pound dog. I cannot live in an apartment anymore. Right.
I had to get out of there too. They kept, it's crazy how apartment places can just jack your rent like so high, and they're like, what are you gonna do? But it's kind of like gas now, right? You're like, what are you gonna do? You gotta drive, right? We're like, but that's kind of messed up, man. Like, so fixed. Like, I have a place now where I own, so that's good.
Nice.
Yeah. So, but
we're so adult now.
Yeah, right. Now, you were a Packers fan, which I think that's why I started. Maybe you weren't a Packer or something like when I first came up to you, or maybe I asked you about like football or something like that, and you said you were a Packers fan. And I was like, and it confused me because you were from Texas.
Yes, right? I know. It was a confusing story for everybody. Yes. It started with Brett Favre on a fantasy football team in college. Then it turned into a Houston fan club that I became completely immersed in. And then it transformed into Casey Jones in Phoenix and going to games.
Gotcha. I think I went to a game.
I chose my apartment location based on how close it was to a Packers bar. That is awesome. The truth.
That is awesome. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I went to a game with you there. And that was kind of a cool little bar because they had like that little train that would go like through the tracks on like the roof. And I'm like, what is this? That place was crazy too. It was like legit like Packers fans. Like,
yes. And from what I understand, the owners were from Wisconsin or something. So they were, it was kind of a haven for Packers. The only thing you had snowbirds. So you always had people like that were.
Right. Oh yeah. There's tons of Packers fans, Bears fans in this city. Yeah. There's one thing that I went up to one of the guys one time that was like, he plays the music during the commercials and stuff like that. And I walked up and I go, when I go to Packer, I've been to a couple Packer games, like at Lambeau. You've been there, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. So they play like music during the thing. They have that thing that goes, go.
Oh yeah.
And I'm like, dude, I have that sound effect. I should send that to you. You should use that. You should always be playing that in here, like nonstop. And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, I don't think he ever did, but. But I was like,
you tried.
Yeah.
You tried to make it more official, but.
Yeah. So The book. The book.
Yes.
When was this officially released? Was this last year that this came out?
Yes.
Okay.
End of August. Yeah, I think end of August of last year.
Gotcha. Okay. So I want to talk about the book. You know, first I want to start by saying this is like definitely one of the most personal reads that I've ever read. And even for a memoir, but like, I almost felt
Did
like
it make you uncomfortable, Josh? I'm sorry.
No, it was really entertaining, but it was personal to the point where it's very relatable. You know, even though I'm a guy and you're a girl, you know what I mean? Like, cause like everybody goes kind of like through the same kind of experiences. Some are more extreme than, you know, others, but yeah, it was kind of like I was reading a diary of your. Now, do you keep a journal or a diary? Like, or
I do some. Really, a lot of the stories, at least in the back half, came from my blog. So I started writing a blog once I stopped drinking, and you know, about different things. But no, I didn't lean on a lot of like journal entries or anything for that stuff. I just wrote a lot from memory, and yeah, it was an interesting roller coaster to go on. So
yeah.
No. So for as personal as it feels, you know, it's like I actually sat on it. I started it, and then I sat on it for about 10 months. It got a little too intense, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna, you know, not write. I'm gonna go be happy for a while.
Yeah.
And so then,
how long did the process take to like write a book? I've heard that it could be grueling, you know, to write a book.
From start to finish, it was almost 2 years.
Yeah.
And so if you take out that 10 months that I really didn't write, I mean, I guess it was still a year and a half. Because everything that people say about shitty first drafts is true. So you will write a book and then you will hate everything about it.
Wow.
And then you got to edit it and get, you know, so this is like round 3 that turned into the final product. So
that's interesting hearing the process of that. Yeah. Obviously one of the most enduring parts of the book is your relationship with your grandparents. And especially Polly, Polly. And I found this book to be almost kind of like a love letter to Polly. You know what I mean? Like a kind of
that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and now we all have grandparents, but what made Polly so special? And obviously you explain it in here, but for people that don't know, like what made Polly so interesting, because you write about Polly a lot. You write about your other grandma, Gladys, I believe, right?
Yes, yeah. That was my mom's mom. Polly was my dad's mom.
Gotcha.
And yeah, well, I think part of what made my relationship with Polly so special is she lived to be almost 100, so she was with me until I was 41 or so. I can't remember what. She died in 2016. Wow. So how old I was at that point. But yeah, you know, she was the grandparent that I got to have for almost my entire, you know, into my adult life.
Yeah.
And not everybody has that, but usually when you do, of course, that's the one that, you know, it's such a special bond because you've not only grown up being spoiled by that grandparent, but then you get to develop this whole adult relationship, which is, I don't know, it's just a cool thing. And she was just the sweetest person that I knew. Like she was tiny, you know, and so, but like, she had a quirky sense of humor every now and then. She'd kind of throw out a zinger, and you're like, "Did that lady just say that?" Because I'm pretty sure she was reading the Bible 5 minutes ago. So, you know, but yeah, she just, you know, she spoiled us with pies and all this other stuff, and so I don't know. She was just really generous.
That's awesome.
And so I think that's where she was, you know, generous with her time to other people, generous to the church, generous to us as a family. With love and attention. And so, yeah, I just realized at some point, and especially after we lost her as a family, that I wanted to be like her. Like,
yeah,
this life is kind of a mess right now. And if I have to pick a role model, it's absolutely going to be Polly. So
yeah, especially someone that was able to, you said she almost lived to 100 years old.
She died 3 months shy of her 100th birthday.
That's like Betty White.
Yeah.
You're like, no, babe, no.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, so we were really
I always
looking
look at it
forward
this
to that,
way.
but
Yeah, I always look at it this way though. Like, you lived to 99 years old. You did something that 99.9% of the population will never do. You know what I mean? Like, that's a massive like feat, you know?
Yeah.
I mean,
and I'm not knocking anybody's life choices, but like we talk about all these things about food and don't cook with this and don't use this and whatever. And I'm like, she did all that stuff and she's 99 and 9 months. So,
Right.
you know, she cooked with bacon grease and all this other stuff. So I just, you know, I love it. I'm like, I just hopefully have really good genes. I mean, I don't know what I'm going to do with 100 years, but, you know, be nice to have that option.
You did something that I got to do, but you got to interview her, like on camera?
Yes.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, that's
how
great.
old was she?
She was, I think it was her 98th birthday. It might have been her 99th. I can't remember. But I got an hour of footage. I finally, I was holding up my phone. I kind of did it on the fly, so I didn't have it all set up. And so after a while, I was like, I can't hold my phone anymore.
Oh, you were doing it on your phone.
Yeah. So I was like kind of holding it up. And yeah, I was, okay, I've asked her all the questions that I wanted to ask her. So yeah, I had all that footage. I was going to write her biography, and then it totally turned into, you know, like you said, a love letter. It turned into a love letter to her, and I got sober a couple years later, so it was like, okay, that was all inspired by her, and that all needs to be in there.
That's awesome. I love it. Yeah. And you said that, you know, gosh, in reading this, I was like, man, I'm getting hungry for pie. Man. So you said she was quite the cook.
Yes.
And
she made everybody's favorite at Christmas or whatever holiday, you know, Thanksgiving, anything. It was like, so there was a whole table full of pies because she couldn't leave anybody out. So it was like, okay, I liked lemon icebox, you know, Dad liked chocolate meringue. I'm probably getting these wrong. My dad's gonna be like, no, I liked coconut meringue. And then, you know, fruit pies, and my mom liked German chocolate cake. It was like everything was on the table.
I was like, oh yeah, sounds good. Yeah, it's awesome. Now, does she have these? Now, is this all by kind of like her memory, or do you have these recipes like sitting around? And have
my
you tried
sister-in-law has all of her recipes. So yeah,
awesome.
She's like, she was more into the baking. I'm not very adept in the kitchen.
Gotcha.
But,
Okay.
But I try. I can make her lemon icebox. It's really easy. So
that's awesome. Yeah. So now I loved how there's a couple things that I took a lot of notes, by the way. So, and you know, I don't think it's going to give away anything in this because you go into extreme detail on some of these, and it's again, you have a gift of painting a picture, and it really is like you're kind of like watching a movie. You know, like, oh man, like I get some popcorn and like get the Christy book. When's the next Christy book coming out? No, yeah. So, but you mentioned how your grandparents, I'm not sure which grandparents, would go walking at the mall.
Yes, that was Polly and her husband Carthel, my dad's parents. Yeah, and it was funny because Carthel was really tall and Polly was really short, and she still like smoked us both. Like, she's off with her little legs, and me and Carthel are just strolling in the mall. Because
that's such an awesome like 80s kind of thing, and it's like perfect people watching, you know, like, hey, let's go like walk around the mall. Like the mall, there's like so much stuff going on all the time. There's all these stores and lights and weird people and, you know, all the new fashions and stuff like that. So yeah, I was like, whoa, that's kind of cool. Like, it's kind of a good idea too, because like you're never going to be bored. You're just going to be just walking around, like, you know, getting some exercise, walking around the mall. I love that.
Yeah.
So
and as a kid, cool. You know, you're like wanting to stop by and throw the coins in the fountain and all that other stuff and looking in the windows. So he probably just stuck back with me so that I could be more entertained than actually exercise. But
that's awesome.
And sadly, I think that was like one of the first malls in the Dallas-Fort Worth area to be torn down. Like, you know, it was,
no.
The poor malls. Other than watching Stranger Things, like, you have no exposure. Yes, I watched. I have not watched this season. But,
I haven't either. Yeah.
Yeah, I watched the mall one.
That's because I was like, whoa, they did an awesome job on this, man. This looks cool. Yeah. Now, there are some cringeworthy moments in this book that stood out for me. Like, oh my gosh, I felt like I was there. I swear to God. When your grandma said, hey, you could stay at my place when you're going to the big football game. and you're like, behave yourself. And then of course you can't, oh man, it's so hard to like, this is like one of those things where reading the book, man, it's hard. It's hard to like, just, especially things like that, football games, man, beers flowing.
Maybe that's where that intersection of having an adult relationship kind of can go south, because you're like, yeah, I'm going to be drunk in front of my grandmother,
man.
So yeah. And I guess it depends on what your family is like, but Polly never drank in her entire life. She was a teetotaler, very proud of it. Clean living.
That's wild.
So yeah.
She never, like, according to your book, you're like, I never saw her drink alcohol. I don't know if she ever even had a sip of alcohol. I have no idea, but that's wild. I mean,
yeah,
that's pretty hardcore.
From what I hear, stories, I don't know my great grandfather, but he was very strict, religious, so yeah, they just didn't. And, so it's like when we would go for Christmas, I mean, we never drank in her house. That was just an unwritten rule.
Right.
You don't bring wine to the house. You don't so every holiday had been sober because, it's like, well, we're at Polly's house, so we don't. And then, but of course you go out. Yeah. Like I went out. I went to the Super Bowl. I mean, who's not going to get drunk at the Super Bowl?
That is so funny.
Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah.
It's a once in a lifetime of watching the Packers at the Super Bowl.
Oh, that's so crazy. Yeah. And it wasn't like too far away. It was like, I don't know, 40 minutes away or something like that. I don't know what
even
you said.
closer. She was like 20 minutes from
the
the
serious?
stadium.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, but she got worried because we were out late, and then it's like,
so funny. Oh gosh, that story is just so great. I mean, to read.
I felt so guilty, like a broken curfew, and and there's more to the story. Of course, you can read the whole gory details, but
I'm sure. Yeah. In the book, going back to kind of like what we were just talking about, like pop culture references, back in the day, being around, we're kind of like the same age, I think, right? You think you're...
Yeah, I'll be 47 on Monday.
Okay, yeah. So I'm 46. So yep, we're same age, same era. Yeah. So there's a section in there that you're talking about, like your Tiger Beat crushes. And of course, I latch onto that. I'm like, oh, okay, all right. But it's funny because there's something that you did in here. You didn't elaborate like on who you were talking about. But, I pretty much got it down. But you just named like the first like names. So I'm going to try to guess the first name by the first name. So I'm going to take a stab at these. Let me know.
Okay.
I'm going back to Tiger Beat in like the 80s. All right, Tiger Beat, 80s. Okay.
I'm picturing now like being in our little sheet forts with our framed photos. So I know, once you start, I'm going to be like, yep, that was the
okay.
one.
All right. So first up, we have Corey, and I'm guessing it's not Corey Feldman. But
correct.
Okay. So that would narrow it down. So it's either Corey Hart or Corey Haim. And I'm going with Corey Haim.
You would be right.
Okay.
You were right.
One for one. Okay. So the next up.
Two or however many are there.
Next up is Kirk. And not a lot of Kirks out there. So you're a little too young for Kirk Douglas. So I'm guessing it wasn't Kirk Douglas. You don't come across as like a metalhead. So I'm going to cross off Kirk Hammett of Metallica. So I'm going to go with, that one's going to be Kirk Cameron. Is that correct?
Ding, ding, ding.
Yes. All right. Okay.
Yes. Although I think it was my friend that liked Kirk Cameron. Okay. And I liked Corey. And it probably changed 100 times. But
I remember I wanted to be Kirk Cameron, when that show first started. That was a cool show. Yeah. And then we had Christian. Now Christian, there's not a lot of Christians either. I mean, like there's lots of Christians, but not named Christians that are famous. And the 90s had Christian Laettner, but this wasn't the 90s. So, and everybody hates Christian Laettner. So I'm going to say this was Christian Slater.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Pump up the volume and Heathers.
Oh, there you go.
Or like, so He was the top for a while, I think.
That's funny. It's going back, watching his like movies. It's so funny that he really wanted to be Jack Nicholson. Like he's like a mini Jack Nicholson,
Yeah, when I think about like Heathers, that was definitely the vibe he was giving off.
And then you did name.
Speaking of Jack Nicholson, if I were younger, his son would be the picture in the frame today.
Really?
He's really cute.
I gotta look him up. I'll put him up on the screen.
I can't think of his name right now, but he was in a Netflix series or something not too long ago. He's like 29, so I'm not being totally creepy, but yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, we'll have to put him up on the screen. Yeah, I'm guessing. Yeah, it comes from Jack Nicholson. He was pretty cool back in the day. So yeah, but yeah, you did say River Phoenix. That was the one that you did right out all the way. Yeah.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, and I was very sad. That was very tragic, and for River Phoenix.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Like didn't he like die? Like they ended up, like they had him out on the sidewalk and shit. I'm like, oh god. Yeah. Now another pop culture reference that you had in here. You mentioned that your husband, he had a hate for this particular song. And it resulted in a huge argument. But in the book, you don't name the song. So I'm like, all right. So she said it was a Blue Öyster Cult song. So that narrows it down pretty. There's not a lot of huge Blue Öyster Cult songs. So
well, and I don't remember, but did I reference the Saturday Night Live skit?
I don't know.
Cowbell? No? Okay.
If you did,
that was
where
he really laid into me about, they even made a skit about it.
Yeah.
Because,
So wait,
does that help?
Yeah. Well, yeah. So it's. I was going to say it's not burning for you. So it's Don't Fear the Reaper, right? So.
Yes.
All right. So now it was you or him that hated the song.
He hates that song. He says it's the most overplayed song in the history of music.
It's overplayed. Okay.
And so even when it comes on today in the car, we change the station. It's not worth my marriage to listen to that song ever again.
You're like,
at least, together.
It is an overplayed song, but there's a lot of those, I mean, after listening to the classic rock radio for, 30 years, it's a lot of overplayed songs on the radio.
I know, and he's a giant Bruce Springsteen fan, so that Sirius XM station is always on in his car. So for me, like every Bruce Springsteen, I probably shouldn't say this. I might end up in the hot seat.
I don't want any part of this. Yeah,
but yeah.
Later in the book, you said that you were able to, as you mentioned before, reconnect with your old record collection, and it was funny, you named a couple of records, and of course I'm like, what records? What records are you talking about? And you did name Corey Hart as one of them.
Yes.
And Tina Turner. So I'm guessing this might be like, so she was rocking 1984, the albums in the collection there. So now you said that you started collecting again, or you have a record player and you're just listening to your older stuff, or
there's a bunch of stuff that like my mom said, take this stuff because I'm not going to move it or whatever. Yeah. So there's even like some old like kids stuff. And then there's some like 12-inch singles, Depeche Mode and stuff I listened to somewhere in there in like high school. And then we did make a trip to the record store in Fort Worth. And so now I have like a Gloria Gaynor original. We've got some Outlaws, some like other things that we bought more recently, but I haven't really added to the collection.
Awesome.
There's like one, I only know of one big record store in Fort Worth, and so I just haven't been there lately. But yeah,
records. I've gone into a couple of record stores lately, and man, they are so expensive. They're pressing new vinyl now, so they're like, I saw this guy on TikTok the other day. He's like, got this new album, $50, and I go, is that a good deal? I'm like, oh my god, $50? Is it made out of gold? Like, what is that? Wow.
I would say you could go see them in concert instead, but you probably couldn't for $50 these days. So
good Lord,
maybe not. But
yeah. So now I loved your descriptions of fashion and musical tastes evolving. Now you just mentioned Depeche Mode.
Yes.
And there was like there's one part that got me you were talking about your old journals in high school and how you were having like, you know, you're depressed over a boy and, you know, we all know how young love is and stuff like that. And
end of the
times,
world.
right?
Yeah.
And it's funny because like, you know, back in the day, it's hard to, this is like why the suicide rate for kids is like, you know, it's like a big deal because it's like, so there's so much pressure with school. I remember, you know, just like stupid stuff. Like I'd have like a giant sit on my forehead and I'm like, fuck, now I gotta go to school with this shit on my like face, or, you know, or when like a teacher would pick you out to like read like a paragraph or something like that. I'm like, I don't want to read in front of the class. I'm like, oh God, everything stresses me out here. Like, you know, just like stupid stuff like that. And, you know, a boy back then, you know, it sounds so stupid now, right? It sounds dumb, but like back then, it's like your whole world, right?
Yeah, totally.
So, one of my favorite lines from the entire book, which is so perfect, it is so great, is when you said you felt like Ali Sheedy walking through a sea of Molly Ringwalds. And I was like, oh, that is so great. It's so great. So that's a perfect like description for people like our age that were like, yes, I get that. You know, people that are like, oh,
yes, John Hughes was king. And so if you know the whole John Hughes catalog, I think there's more than one reference, John Hughes reference in there, but yeah.
Yeah, it's so good.
Pretty in Pink was actually my favorite, so I feel like I mentioned it somewhere in the book. But
okay. Now, all right, so let's talk about some of those guys that were in your life. I mean, I don't want to get too crazy because there's some serious stuff in here.
And none of them are actually named what they're really named.
Yeah,
other than my husband Ryan. So yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Which is probably good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is like I said, it's kind of like it's kind of like watching a Lifetime movie, but like a rated R Lifetime movie. You know,
yes.
Going through some of this stuff because a lot of you know, there's some guys that were. You dated this like really big dude, big football player, like picked you up by the neck or something like that. I'm like, geez, man. And he said he like strangled you or something like that. Almost like strangled. You're like, you know, I was like, oh my gosh. I'm like sweating reading this stuff. But yeah, no, like when that kind of stuff happens, like I realize you're like in the moment, but that's something that a lot of like women can relate to as well. I think, you know, because there's so many relationships that are both physical and mentally abusive, and when you're in the mix of it, it's like, you know, when you're on the outside, you're just like just leave, just fucking leave. What are you doing? Like, you know, but
right. I think that today, you know, I guess that's like I'm really happy with the way people are more willing to tell their stories. I mean, that's almost like our generation was sort of handcuffed in that regard. It was so scary for me to write those stories and bring it out in the public. Whereas like, I don't know, you know, someone younger than me, you know, the next generation or the generation after that is like telling their stories on social media and whatever. But it's, I hope that, you know, for women my age, they're like, okay, yeah, that happened to me.
Yeah.
And you know, I can create this great life out of that. And so it took me, a really long time to be brave enough to like put that out to the world. And then there's parts, you know, that I had to really think about language and, you know, my parents, you know, I gave my mom a copy of the book before I published it because I was like, okay, please read this.
Oh man, that's crazy.
I know that I may or may not change anything, but
did you change anything?
I don't think I did. I think by the time it got to her, it was like, okay, here's what I'm comfortable sharing from my story that she knows, that, you know, my family knows. And, you know, and I was most worried about my job. And, you know, coworkers being judgmental and stuff. And that was ridiculous because I have a great team. And so everybody was super supportive. But yeah, people would be like, God, read like fiction. Like it's almost like they could sort of dissociate from, you know, me being like, because of the writing style, but then still, get
what did your
glimpsing stuff like that had happened. That I'm like,
what did your mom think? What did your mom think of the book?
You know, my family, we always say, you know, it has a happy ending. So that's the good part. And so, yeah, I mean, of course, it was emotional for her. And my dad read it later, once it was actually out in print. And so they're both so supportive of me telling my story and, you know, my sobriety and all of that stuff too. But I mean, like you said, there's some cringeworthy stuff. And I kept, I'd be like, okay, I could filter this sentence a little bit more, and then I'm like, but I'm not going to, because this moment calls for this phrase or this F-bomb, which is, there's only one, I think, in the whole book.
Really?
And I was like,
wow.
But I was like, this moment is that's exactly what captures that moment. So yeah.
No, you went through the whole range of men, like, you know, physically abusive guys, lazy guys, alcoholics, cheaters, the whole deal. It's all in there. Again, check it out. It's good.
It was so important for it not to be just about sobriety and like my journey to sobriety, because not everyone, alcohol is their thing, but codependency might be, or like worthiness and all of that stuff. So, you know, between the grandmother's story, which is all the feel-good stuff, then there's also all of these themes that I felt like anyone could relate to, even the spirituality stuff and like being raised in a church. And I've just had so many people, specifically women, come up and say, this is my story. Like, you wrote my story, and they're so relatable. So yeah,
I can definitely see that, because it is I'm so glad that you did not keep out all the stories that you did include, because that is the stuff that people can relate to. And there's some messed up stuff that happens in people's lives, you know? So, you know, and it makes it more impactful when you talk about the really bad stuff, which does turn out good in the end. And I think that is where it's at as far as, you know, relatability. So, all right, let's get to drinking. Let's get to drinking, Christy. All right. All right. So, what age did you start drinking?
Oh, I think I was 15.
15?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, where were you, and who is this? And do we have contact numbers for him? So I'm going to give him a call. No.
So one of my earliest memories, and like my brother knows, you know, I have a half brother who's 9 years older than me. So when I was 15, he was in his 20s. And I remember going to a concert, and it might have even been Depeche Mode, I'm not sure. But we were sitting in the lawn, and so you could bring in stuff at that time. This was a long, long time ago. So I think you could bring stuff to the lawn. So we had a ice chest of wine coolers, and I probably had like 2 wine coolers. Mm-hmm. And of course I was super sauced because I was 15 and I
do they still make those, by the way?
I don't know. Probably.
It was so big back in the day. Everyone was like, yeah, I'm having wine coolers.
No, White Claw. That is today's wine cooler.
You're correct.
Yes.
Remember, and then it was Zima for a while back in the 90s.
Whatever. Yeah, like hard seltzer, all that stuff.
Yeah. There's a million of those too.
Yeah. So that's probably today's wine cooler now that you think about it. But all of the things I will never try now, but it's okay. I'm certain I'm not missing anything. But so I don't know. It was a couple wine coolers, and then it was, you know, sneaking probably a sip of whiskey out of mom and dad's liquor cabinet or whatever, and then it was, you know, we had off-campus lunch, so it was raiding parents' liquor cabinets and stuff like that.
Gotcha. Okay.
Parties,
escalate. Yeah. Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah. Whatever you can get away with when you're in high school. I mean, it wasn't like
what even get your hands on back in the day.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Which is not always a lot. But,
yeah. Or it's like what's that movie? Superbad. They're like trying to get like older people to buy them alcohol and stuff like that.
Yes, we did that too. You know, you stand out in front of the convenience store and you're like, "Hey, you can keep your change if you get us a 6-pack."
Oh yeah. So, like we were talking about before, alcohol is one of those things where especially as an adult, it's like almost impossible to escape. I mean, really. I mean, it's everywhere, right? Yeah. It's like sporting events, concerts, holidays, anything, party, anywhere you go, there's just flowing alcohol. And I feel that, I don't know if it's like worse than it was, but there's certainly like more, different kinds of alcohol. It's, it's so distributed everywhere, like more now, but I don't know. It's really easy to get into serious trouble with alcohol because it just goes hand in hand with everything. And if you, it's funny because if you break it down by the week, I mean, every single day you could find a reason to drink, right? You're like, oh, it's.
And I did.
Yeah. Yeah, right? You're like, well, Tuesday nights are ladies' night or whatever, like Friday and Saturday, that's a given. Like, but during the week, then it's like, there's always a holiday, there's always some sort of, reason to, have a drink here and there. I don't know. It's just, it can get way out of control. And
yes.
In reading the book, you sounded like I did originally when I first started drinking, because I drank to be social, right?
Yeah.
So, and liquid courage, all that good stuff, and it works, you know what I mean? But so I mean, like, there's a reason why people like drink, especially when they're out at a social event. Now, it can be dangerous though, because people also drink when they're stressed or when they're depressed, bored. And did you have any of those, like when you were?
Yeah. Yes. To all of the above.
Yeah. Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it was,
because there's a big difference, right? I mean, like, because, drinking with people, I mean, it's not a huge difference, but like, when you're drinking by yourself and then you're just getting kind of like hammered by yourself or whatever, that's a kind of like a different thing. Cause like I have relatives who have gotten some serious trouble with, like, almost killed themselves with alcohol. And it's kind of scary to see like how someone that's really quick and, witty and like the funniest guy you've ever met, and they become this kind of like a shell of themselves, when they get to a certain point. I'm like, man, what happened, man? So that's kind of scary to see.
And mine was always real social. I mean, I do think when I moved to Arizona originally, I know when I moved into the house, from the apartment to the house, that was probably the most dangerous it got or sketchy in terms of like drinking by myself. But then I just started going to the bar so that I wasn't drinking alone.
That makes it okay.
And then, and then I didn't always Uber. So that, it was like, it was worse or, more dangerous than for me to go out to the bar than it was just to sit at home and drink. But of course that was depressing. And that meant, I was an alcoholic, so I can't sit at home and drink.
Yeah.
I was going out to the bar down the road on Indian School, like a couple of nights a week, 3 nights a week.
And you said that in the book, that you would have 8 or 9 drinks 3 to 4 times a week. And that's quite a bit. Like I have this thing, because like the thing for me, I could drink a couple days in a row, or used to be able to drink a couple days in a row, but I would get so hungover. Do you get like bad hangovers? Or
that was part of it. Yeah, it was like it got to the point where I met Ryan at that bar on Indian School, and so we were drinking buddies for the first couple years of our relationship, but we would talk about 2-dayers. So we'd be like, because that hangover would last 2 days. We're like, oh, this one's a 2-dayer. You wake up on the second day and you still don't feel good. And we're like, oh, God.
I'm sorry. So he would get hangovers too?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you know these like evil human beings that don't get hangovers? Like, I've met so many people lately that I'm like,
it's a unicorn. I don't know that I have ever met one. I feel like anyone who says they don't is lying. But,
I swear to you, I know people that have never had a hangover, and it's weird. There's this old sportscaster, Pat O'Brien. You ever know that guy? He's like, he's like, Pat O'Brien. That guy. He said that he actually has written about this. I've seen him in interviews talk about it. He said, I have this weird thing where I've never had a hangover. And he goes, but that was part of my curse, because if you've heard those tapes that he was calling and leaving messages with that girl that he was like trying to get with, they're really bad, because he would get super drunk, and there's repercussions for drinking.
Yeah.
And that's the horrible hangover. And he said, I didn't have that. So basically what's stopped him was
like zero deterrent from
yeah. So So those tapes probably helped him because they were really bad. Yeah. So now you could tell just by reading the book how alcohol is, it's so hard to give up. It really is. And I'm right there with you. Like for me right now, my friend, not to put a downer on this, but I had a friend recently die. She was leaving a bar. I don't know any of the details. It's still kind of, early, but she got in a car accident and she died. And that night I was like, I found out that day and I was like, well, we gotta have some drinks in her honor. Right. And Christy, I didn't even have that many drinks. It wasn't like an old school rager. Like we used to party. It was not, it was just like I had, a few drinks and I don't even know if I had a shot. I might've had like one shot or something like that. I woke up the next day and I was so hungover. I mean, we're talking about, one of those, like, I'm just sitting there, like, I couldn't hold anything down for, the next day until like 5:30 at night. And I finally look up, and I look in the mirror and I felt like I was like having a heart attack. I was puking so hard. And I looked in the mirror and I'm like, and I looked up and I'm kind of like sweating and I look in the mirror and I'm like, the fuck am I doing? What is this? Is this worth it? Is this really worth this?
And I'm only laughing because I know that reflection. Yeah. I know exactly what that looks like.
Yeah. I looked up and I'm like, Jesus Christ, dude. Sorry to use the Lord's name in vain. No, but like, I looked up and I go, I gotta stop this. I don't know if I'm done officially, but I have not had a drink since. And this has been the longest since like 1997 that I have not had a drink. And it's been like, I don't know, a good month, maybe longer. But now, because I bring that up because you mentioned that you were going to stop drinking numerous times, right?
Oh, yes. I lost count. So yeah, I don't know. But yes.
And the one that really stood out for me was when you and Ryan decided that you're like, you know what? We're going to give up drinking. We're going to stop drinking for 30 days on July 5th. And I was like, that is hilarious. That's perfect. That is perfect. Of course, it couldn't be July 3rd. It has to be July 5th.
We had to go camping with my parents, and camping in the heat with my parents involves a lot of beer.
So great. Oh yeah, but it's just so perfect. No, but like another part that was wild was when you finished running that marathon, and what did you do after that marathon?
That is like one of my favorite paragraphs. And yeah, I was like, there's no better way to celebrate a half marathon than with a pack of cigarettes and a blackout.
Perfect. just perfect. Yeah. No, that was great.
I sat and drank on a patio and I probably couldn't walk for the next 2 days because all I did was further dehydrate myself. And
by the way, all you are at that point is massively dehydrated and probably sore. Your body's just a mess from running or whatever, jogging. And of course you go and drink. Oh, I can't even imagine that hangover. Oh, that must have been a nice one. That must have been a beauty.
Yeah. I don't know. And that was, I think I celebrated with booze more than I drank stressed. I think it was, I feel like it was always to have a good time and be happy. But
yeah. Oh, yeah.
I don't know. And then in later years, it became more about stress. But I don't know. I think the stress was a lot of self-induced, like, okay, I'm, I'm just ready to be done with this.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So now, Christy, speaking of blackouts, I don't know how many times that you mention the word blackout in this book, but it's pretty alarming. And
yes.
And how often would you say that you blacked out when you would go drinking?
At least once a week. I would say even after we moved to Texas and we were just drinking in the backyard, to be safe and to be in a safe space. And it was probably 2-3 nights a week. I added it up one time, and it would have been like being in a coma for 3 months. Like I said, okay, if I'm blacked out an average of 3 or 4 hours a week, or a night times however many times a week, it would add up to like 3 months of my life.
Now, is that when you had that calendar?
That was later, I think.
That was crazy.
I can't remember where all that came in, but I think so that movie, Promising Young Woman, I think is came out last year, and it was like up for a Golden Globe or something. And if anyone's seen that, that's that was my life. Like, I was blacked out at bars, and thank goodness I never got murdered, because I mean. And that was that happened to me in college, and then there was some level of, I don't know, magic or, like somebody looking out for me or whatever, that for a while it wasn't like that. And then toward the end, I was drinking so much in one sitting that I was blacking out all the time. And then it's like, and at least then I was with my husband. So, Ryan, of course, was going to look out for me, but he would tell me all this stupid stuff I said, and I'm like, well, okay, that's embarrassing. And, and I'd wake up it got so scary of just like waking up and not even remembering, what happened or how I got to bed or whatever. And it's like, this is dumb. This is kind of like you looking in the mirror and being like, this is like, what's the point of drinking if I don't even remember the entire, whatever. Like, what's the point?
I mean, as with everybody, everyone has a love-hate relationship with alcohol. I love being buzzed with the alcohol. I love that, it's, you get you could laugh and stuff and have fun with your friends, and, you can talk to anybody in the bar, no problem. The part that I hate, obviously, is what you talked about, blacking out, doing, stupid stuff, and then the hangover. That might be the worst, because there's nothing is there anything worse than wasting a day? Like, you only have so many days off, or, that you have things to do. And if you get hung over like that, you're done. You're out. You can't do anything. So it's ridiculous. It's not worth it. Right.
You can binge watch TV, so then you can catch up on all the water cooler talk, but that's about it. That's about all a day on the couch is good for.
With one eye open.
Yeah, great. Yes, I did watch that season of Stranger Things. I kind of watched that. I was in and out. So, it's terrible. And I don't know. I think, and not to be preachy about it, but the litmus test for people, or for me and a lot of people I know in sobriety, is do you have an off switch? And if the answer is no, maybe you kind of reassess your relationship with it. But I did not have an off switch.
Right.
Even when the blackout started, it was nope, I still don't have an off switch. If I start,
and it's just so bad,
I'm going to go until I black out.
Yeah, because then if you go to a bar, like you mentioned that you would have a regular bar that you go to, then it's hey, it's Christy. All right, Christy, let's get a shot. And then people are like, oh, God, the communal shots, man. And by the way, I always talk about this. Is there a worse time to do shots than, and they're always at the end of the night, right? Let's go. Let's get a round of shots. Everybody, I'm like, is that a good idea? We're all about to, I don't know, drive home, or just, I don't know, walk home or whatever. And here we are. Last call. Let's do some shots.
Yeah.
Horrible.
It's the perfect nightcap.
It is awful. Oh, it's so gross. Anyway.
Well, I kept peeling off those. So I was okay, no more shots, so that it was okay, no more wine. And then it was but then I was having, 15 beers in a night. It didn't really help. So I don't know. My self-imposed rules did not work.
Yeah. So going back to that blackout calendar you made, you mentioned that you said you had a total of what'd you say, 3 months? So give or take.
Well, I didn't. Those were two separate. Okay. I think I did that for about a month. My friend was running, and so she was logging her miles with this little pixel calendar, and I was like, "Oh, that's a cool idea to keep track of my drinking."
Oh my God!
A green square for January 1st meant that I didn't drink at all, and so that's how desperate I was to control my drinking. And so I put a black square, if I got drunk or, drank more than I intended or blacked out or whatever. And so, I had this idea that I could moderate. And so I thought, well, if there's enough squares that are moderation, then that would be. But yeah, I think I only did that for a month before I felt so defeated that I was like, forget it, this isn't going to work. But yeah. But if I just were to add it up at, then it's like.
Yeah. You know what I think is a good thing to show people? I saw this TikTok the other day. Are you on TikTok at all? Do you ever surf that thing?
I dabble.
The thing's really addicting. It's like, if you're not on it, don't get on it.
I have an addictive personality. Okay, so it's not good. I don't need to go to 12-step for TikTok addiction, so I'm just not going to do it.
Yeah. So I saw this TikTok, and it was like I don't know if you've seen these videos, but they're on other formats too. But this guy, he did this TikTok where he went to this wedding, and it's really creative, but it's messed up because basically what he did was he recorded a snippet of everybody's first drink and then everybody's last drink.
Wow.
And it is, wow. I mean, you go to, I went straight to the comments, and the comments are like, holy moly, wow, if that's not ever I need to stop drinking. Yikes. Because you usually don't see yourself on video, especially at that point in the night, everyone's, having fun, celebrating whatever. But I did see myself blacked out one time. And we were all walking back from a football stadium to our hotel years ago. And I mean, we were way gone. We were pointing stuff out. We couldn't even name what things were. We're like, that's it's just like a concrete pillar or something like that. Look at that thing. And we're all slurring. I'm like, good Lord. And that shocked me. I was like, whoa, I've never seen myself that gone. And that's
yeah. Ryan filmed me one time, and it was I was sitting in the kitchen, and it was apparently mine was always, whatever, I'm fine. Whatever, I'm fine. Whatever, I'm fine.
Yeah. And it's funny that the way that you impersonate yourself, by the way, you did it perfectly, because you ever see when
You've seen that. No.
Yeah. But when people when their eyes start to close, you're like, yeah, you don't even notice. Your just eyes start to close, and eventually they just, pass out or whatever. But yikes. Yeah. So that is alarming. Yeah. I would say, if you're ever thinking about, if you're on the fence of, stopping drinking, have someone record yourself.
Have somebody record you. Absolutely.
It's crazy, right? Oh, so moving into getting sober. Now you had some good runs with getting sober. Now you had a 30-day stretch that you mentioned. These are just, I marked these down. You had a few months, and you had 89 days, which are awesome. I mean, those are what would you say the hardest stretches are? Because after a certain while, it doesn't, I would say it's a lot easier after a while, like anything else, right? But what would you say the first couple weeks, or the first month, or
I would say probably the first 2 months, because for the first month, if you're wanting to make a big lifestyle change, maybe you get excited and you're doing other things to replace that time, and you're motivated with your new hobby and stuff like that. So then it's you pass the 30-day mark, and then you're you've probably been up against a challenge of a social event, or somebody, you've been at an awkward happy hour where you were trying to drink club soda or whatever that was. So I think it takes that long to get through all of those things that you don't realize, like you said at the very beginning, alcohol's everywhere. So, having to face those challenges, you're okay, so you have to be really confident in it the first month, and then you need to be, unless you hibernate, which I think a lot of people, it went both ways during the pandemic, right? Either people drank themselves out of their misery, or they got sober because they could isolate.
Yeah. I definitely drank less, because I'm inherently, I'm that social drinker guy. So I'm I remember there was a couple times I'm why am I drinking? What am I doing here? What is this? I'm not going to the bars after this. What am I doing? I'm just sitting here, just drinking. And I'm so I drank less. So I'm and some people I can definitely see, especially people that were completely isolated with nobody around, I could see them getting into trouble. And they did say that a lot of people got, problems over the pandemic for a lot of reasons.
So it definitely was split. I mean, I know for some people that I know in the sober community, it was like, well, okay, then they didn't have to deal with those challenges, but then they came around again, like those challenges and being social. So you kind of have to like re-enter the social world and figure out if, Listen, I think my biggest, and I don't even know if how much I talk about this in the book, but like, I just got to this point where I finally learned about the fact that like nobody cares what you're doing, what everybody's like so rabid. And so finally I was like, I think that's where I feel like I'm more fun now because I don't give a shit what other people think of me. So,
Right.
So like I can be silly and whatever, and I'll be the first one on the dance floor now and whatever, just trying to get people to loosen up and have a good time. And I'm like, who am I? Because
But you're also more comfortable in your own skin though, too,
Yes,
right? So like,
totally.
So that's like one of those things where back in the day, back in college, we'd be like, we'd be drinking and stuff like that, and be like, I think I'm done. And then my buddy Ryan would come up and go, "Oh, what a puss! Don't be a puss, dude!" And I'm like, "Oh, I guess I am being a puss. Give me another beer," like stupid stuff like that.
Yes,
but no, I was like,
and you're drinking because all you care about is what everybody else thinks, and like, oh crap, I can't be a
Right.
Yeah,
and like you said, like on the dance floor, I'm like, I don't care. Like, give me a mic, I'll do some karaoke right here, like sober. I'm like, oh, I'd never do that, but like in the past, like I need a. There used to be like these karaoke hosts where I'd walk in and I hadn't even had any drinks. They're like, "All right, Josh, you're coming up," and I go, "Oh no. I need some booze first. You call somebody else, man." Yeah. So, but now I probably wouldn't care. I'd be like, "All right, just give me a mic." But I haven't really done karaoke in a long time either. So, now, Christy, when is your sober birthday?
It is May 12th, 2018. So I just surpassed 4 years since my last drink.
Crazy. And you're still sober. You're still doing it.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
And I don't even like think about it anymore. Ryan drinks occasionally. My family, whatever. I love my life. And that's what sometimes like in my sober circles, whatever, you just create a life that you love, and then you don't need to escape from it. You don't ever want to have a freaking hangover again. And so
I'm getting so much stuff done this last like month and a half or whatever. Oh, so much stuff done.
And you start to feel better, and eventually it just kind of creates a reward. And everybody's journey is personal and different, so whatever that looks like for you, it's at least you've given yourself this chance to see what life is like without it. And
I like you mentioned, I have some big tests coming up. Like I have gone to check this out. I've gone to 2 concerts in the last 2 weeks, which is crazy, by the way. I didn't go to concerts for 2 years, and now I've gone to 2 in 2 weeks. But anyway, I've gone to 2 concerts in 2 weeks. Not a drop of booze. And I'm like, I don't think I've had a drop of booze, or I haven't had a drop of booze at a concert. I don't even remember when.
One of them was in Vegas, right? No, y'all were talking about Vegas, but it was there in Phoenix. Okay. Because it was like, that would be, I have been to Vegas without drinking. I have been to Vegas a few times in sobriety, and I'm like,
That's wild too. Yeah, that's a task.
I ziplined though. That was fun. So that's something fun you can do sober in Vegas, is zipline over Fremont Street.
Yeah. So that's what I was going to talk about. So basically, part of you being able to be successful with your sobriety is you started picking up a lot more, hobbies and I'm different things to keep yourself occupied, right?
Yes. I was like, I'm going to grab life by the horns, and I'm going to do all the things. So I was traveling a lot for work, and I would get out and sightsee in every city that I visited. So that was cool. Usually I could maybe find somebody who also didn't want to sit at the hotel bar or sit in their hotel room and, go wander around. That first year, I think I went to San Francisco. I saw the Golden Gate Bridge. I went to Niagara Falls. I was in Toronto for a meeting, and I drove down there. went to Ottawa. I had to go to Calgary, so I went to Banff by myself for a day.
I love seeing pictures of that place. Is it as cool in person? I'm sure it's way better in person.
Oh man, I think that's probably the best trip I've ever. And it was only a day, but it was. My friend just went a couple of weeks ago, and I was looking at her pictures, and it just like took me right back to how gorgeous it was.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
So cool.
So that was great. I'm super into yoga now, and I'm in an online yoga community that I'm really tight with. I've been in there for 3 years. So, I'm like,
there's a lot of stuff that you didn't do back in the day, right?
Yeah.
You didn't have time to fit it into your drinking schedule.
I did not. I mean, I started at 5 p.m. and, at first you're like, oh my gosh, what do I do with all these hours? And now I live on a farm. So I get up and I water my garden and I feed the cats and I do, whatever.
It's so funny that you say that because I've sort of like, I have these plants and stuff now. It's like watering all these plants.
Water your plants, Josh.
So funny. One of the things that you did mention as well, you said that earlier in your life, you said that you didn't want to have kids, right? But that was fascinating because you said that the people that had kids, they had always something to take care of and do with their families and stuff like that. So I don't know how
other people stay busy, with their families or whatever. And so
they have stuff to do, right? And you're like, well, I can go to the bar or something, you always
have like too much freedom with your time. So
you're not taking the kids to soccer, whatever.
No,
so,
although I mean that like, mommy wine culture could be a whole other episode, but so I have friends who have their own challenges in that aspect, but it's, you don't. So I mean, Ryan and I could just sit and drink from 5 p.m. till midnight and
there you go.
Feed the dog and that's it. Half the time we didn't even feed ourselves or we ordered pizza, but now I take care of chickens and cows and a dog and 2 cats and
wow.
Lots of plants and a whole garden. And
that is wild.
I'm like way too busy to drink.
There's too many things counting on you to plants and animals.
A lot of responsibilities.
Where's my food? Like, what's going on here? Sorry, mommy's hungover. So, another thing that you talked about in the book was a big part of your recovery was reconnecting with your spirituality. And now I'm not religious myself, but I love how you explained how that you would kind of like take your favorite parts of different religions and practice those in like your everyday life. That was kind of cool. That was kind of like a cool little thing. Like, like not just following one specific religion, but taking like, because I've always said about church and stuff like that. I love every building in every city. The coolest building is a church, right? You're like driving by, you're like, that's so cool, man. Like, and all the things that go on in the churches, like the community stuff and all the, different kinds of things, the activities and stuff they're doing. I always love that kind of stuff. It's just kind of like the ideas and stuff like that. But if you take kind of like the best aspects of each of these, that's kind of a cool idea that you do.
It was so wild because I know I talk about in that part of the book, like when I was in high school, not feeling like I was connected to my church. So I kept going around and like, asking friends if I could go to church with them and can I see what your religion is like? And then what are yours is, so Catholic, Church of Christ, whatever. And I talked to someone recently who said that part really resonated with her because she kind of did the same thing. But so, I mean, today I don't go to church because I feel like there was a whole part of my life where that just wasn't working for me. And so it's okay for me to explore what it looks like for me to like connect with just something bigger than myself. And there's a lot of things that, principles and spirituality and philosophy that all kind of fits together to be what and all I have to do is like, we live in a gorgeous place now. I can watch the sunset every night and be like, yeah, I'm pretty sure there's a God, but so there's definitely something bigger. That's
awesome. It was funny because when you're talking about going to different churches and stuff like that, I saw this video of this guy and he was like, yeah, I went to this this black church. I don't know, it was like down in the South or something like that. And he was like, oh my God, this thing was awesome. It was like, you know, the Blues Brothers were all like just going crazy and stuff. And he goes, yeah, it's just like that. I was like, he goes, my church, we're all just sitting there like singing these like, you know, boring little songs.
It's a stoic. Yeah. People can get enthusiastic about it. You know, and that's a good way to be. Like, be passionate about whatever you believe in. So
yeah. Now, coming back full circle. Now, it was interesting reading how you really wanted to keep Polly's spirit alive with some of the skills that she had, whether it be baking, as you said, you didn't, you know, and that didn't really pan out as far as, you know, the baking and stuff like that. But you tried like, you know, piano or sewing and stuff like that, because she had like tons of like those types of talents, right?
Yes.
So you mentioned those, but how long did you kind of like try those out? Because, you know, I've heard that, you know, playing the piano, man, like I heard that's like one of those things where it's kind of like learning a language. It's really like you can do it fairly easy if you're young, when your mind's kind of like molding, but when you're an adult, it's kind of a lot harder.
So your YouTubers who are watching this, there's Polly's piano.
Oh, nice.
So it's here.
That's awesome.
We've moved it like twice. So it's here, and so I don't know. I'm putting it out there for accountability that someday I don't care if it's Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. I will learn how to play the piano. She used to teach me.
You can't play chopsticks?
I probably could. She used to like the Blue Danube waltz or something. That was one of them that she taught me. In fact, it's funny. I have a picture of me when I was like 3, sitting at the piano that's up in the window. But yeah, I did all those things really fast because I was like, I've got to stop drinking. I've got to do something to fill my time. And I have to honor my grandmother. Like, I almost became obsessed with that aspect of it. And I think it was just one of those things. I look back now and I'm like, oh, I was grieving her. You know, I was just like trying so hard to connect with her that I became, like almost obsessed with, okay, I've got to do something that, you know.
I could see that. I could see that.
Then I found volunteering. And so that became like, how I could embody who Polly was. So.
Yeah, you said that was like the Meals on Wheels kind of deal?
Yeah. So, I mean, now that we've moved, I've got to find a different organization to get involved with here. There's a couple of different places that feed people. So I'm like, oh, that's probably my jam. But
that's cool.
Yeah, I did Meals on Wheels for 3 years. I'm a mentor through Big Brothers Big Sisters. Wow. There's a high school program you can do that's just once a month you go to the high school. So we're out for summer, but so
that's awesome. That's great. Now you kind of sold yourself short in this when you're like, Polly has so many talents and I don't have any. I don't have any real talents. And I'm like, wait a minute. I remember you saying in this book that so bad. It's like you had some talents, Christy. Could Polly chug a beer in 5 seconds and drink a guy under the table? I don't think so. I'm
sitting here dreading what's coming. Yeah. No, she probably couldn't. No.
Oh, okay.
No. So I was a champion beer chugger for sure.
But she never had a hangover though. So
no, she was fortunate in that regard. Yeah.
That's so crazy. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Now,
not one that I will, like proudly.
Like, oh yeah, I can brag about that. That's great. Thanks, yeah. Did I ever? It's getting bad. Did I ever race you in beer chugging? Because I used to win money doing that.
I don't know. Probably not. But yeah. If we did, I may not remember.
Oh God, of course. No, that was always. I would tell people, they're like, my friends, they would be like, we go to a bar, there would be someone in the corner having a drink contest, and my buddies would go over there and like, hey, my buddy could beat you. And I'm like, whoa, don't do that. Don't like tell me to go over and like have a contest with guys. I don't like doing this. Like the fact that I can do it doesn't mean that I want to do it, especially after late in the night drinking. Like, I remember this one time they put it, everybody was like throwing down because they thought their friend was like this, you know, the fastest drinker they ever saw. And they're just throwing, there's like a pile of money on the table. And I'm like, oh my God, are we really doing this? And I'm like, and I'm like sitting there trying to like warm up the beer, like with my hand and like put like, you know, fingers in it trying to warm it. Cause you know, you want to choke on it if I slam it too hard. So anyway, I win. And I grab all the money. I put it in my pocket. And then about 10 minutes later, I'm out in the parking lot, just, in the back alley. I'm like, oh, that was fun. That was great. Good time. Good
Worth
time.
every penny.
It comes full circle, doesn't it? With the fun drinking. Yeah. Oh, gosh. Yeah. So now, Christy, are you going to be writing any more books? Are you like planning on any kind of like, like there could be a sequel to
Yes,
this,
but
like,
I promise not to put it
farm?
on a Top Gun timeline. I promise. I will not put it. Yeah.
Okay.
You will not wait as long as. Yeah, I really want to write. I really want to pick up where I left off with like the move here and kind of. There's a lot of fun stories that kept. I mean, we sold our house. We bought a camper. I lived in a camper for 9 months.
Oh yeah, I bet there's some stories about that. That's great.
This intriguing story about how we found this property. That's kind of all of them meant to be kind of thing. So. Yeah, I definitely have that in my mind. I also started another project that was like historical fiction, but I just, between the move and everything else, so I've got something started, and then I definitely want to do a sequel to Stronger Roots, Wayward Soul, because I feel like this whole farm journey and where I'm at today and like wanting to start retreats and everything that I'm doing here on the land is that next chapter of my life. Yeah. Sure, so.
Well, you definitely have a talent for writing a book, and this was a great
Thank
read,
you.
and I strongly recommend that everybody go out and get this. Now, where can this be found? This can be found like anywhere you can buy books, like Amazon and all that good stuff.
So it's on Amazon, and then also my website is thebravekind.com, and you can buy an autographed copy on my website. So,
nice! I should have done that. Dang! If I send you this, can you autograph it for me?
Absolutely, and I still come to Phoenix for work, so we'll have to bring you a copy. But
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. Yeah. So just a couple of random things before I let you go here. On your 43rd birthday, you said you celebrated with the tattoo. What was the tattoo?
Yes. Goodness.
Goodness.
So I don't. It's a little blurry in the dark.
I can see it. I can see it.
Yeah. So I remembered this song that I knew as a kid, and thankfully had the album that I could look up, and I was like, "That's what it was. It was on this album that I listened to when I was like 5." And I remember that. And so yeah.
What was it?
Guiding principle. It's like a church, like a religious album.
Huh.
Yeah.
Okay.
I asked my mom, and she's like, I think I got it at Sunday school or something. And so I started flipping through the albums, and sure enough, I was like, that's it. So
wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I hadn't thought about that song in forever. And somebody at work said, "You're so good to do that." Like I was volunteering for something, and so like that song just popped into my head, and I was like,
it just reminded me. Do you still have that little apple? Yeah, that little.
I do have the apple. Oh, I thought it was up in the window here, but I still have it. Yes, it's the Fisher Price apple.
That was the weirdest thing ever. I walk in and I remember I had a little baby, little apple thing. I don't even know, what is it? It's like just like a little toy.
It's like a little, like a chime, like a.
And I could not believe that it was just displayed right there when I came over to your Crawfish party thingy, and I was like, oh my god, I freaked out, and I was like, I gotta take a picture of this. Oh, this is awesome. And you're like laughing. I was like,
I have all kinds of like nostalgic things. Yeah,
it's so great. Now, are you finally willing to admit that Eddie Rabbitt's "Driving My Life Away" is better than "I Love the Rainy Night"?
No. I will never concede defeat. Never. I don't know why you think that's the better choice, but I mean the beat, Love a Rainy Night.
They're both great. They're all so good.
I know. Well, and I don't know if I had told you the whole story, but I was thinking, so my mom got a 1979, I think it was a Pontiac Bonneville, brand new, and it had an 8-track. And it came, the dealership like gave you the free 8-track that had all these songs on it. And that was on that 8-track. So I probably listened to it about 50 times when I was 5, which is why it is always going to be my personal favorite.
All right.
Because, it was on, it's burned into my soul.
I love that song. That's actually a really good album. That
age 4 or 5.
Yeah.
It was like a compilation, so it was funny because "Here You Come Again" by Dolly Parton was on it too.
Ooh.
Like who randomly thinks of that song? But it's because I learned it when I was 4.
Yeah.
And we'll
That's
never
like one of her
forget
favorite.
it.
pop crossover hits. Yeah. Dolly.
So
Gotta love Dolly.
That's the why behind that choice, and I wasn't sure that I had ever shared that story with you. So yeah.
No, I love it. Yeah, you haven't. We just argue about which song's better, and we all know how much you love arguing about songs with Ryan.
Yeah. Apparently, I don't know. The men in my life, I'm just like, just don't see eye to eye on music.
Now, you also had a pet python at one point?
I did. Yeah.
First off, how do you get a pet python, and how long did you have the pet python? What do you feed the python? You got to tell me about this pet python story.
Well, I mean, I worked at PetSmart, so everybody had a desk pet. I just happened to choose a snake, and so I had a snake in college because my boyfriend was into them. So it was like, oh yeah, I got to impress this guy and get a snake. So yeah, so then later, fast forward to PetSmart days, and yes, I had a snake. So I had it the whole time I worked there, so 4 years.
Did it ever escape?
It did. And it crawled. So I had the office chair that has, like the padded back, and it crawled up into the chair back to get to somewhere dark. And so maintenance had to come and break my chair, take the chair apart to get the snake out. Yeah.
Wow. Did you, now, would you actually feed it like rats and stuff like that? Like, what would you?
Frozen ones. Yeah.
Frozen rats.
So, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, at least you were kind of humane about it. Oh gosh. Now, you know what? And also there's another pet story that you had, like when you're moving your dog. Oh, I felt so bad. You're like, you're describing the whole process. And I was like, oh, poor dog. Like they put him down.
I know they have to like ride in the cargo area. And so yeah, it was very sad because I'm all worried. I'm moving to this state. I've never been to Arizona, like moving, I'm upheaving like my whole life. And then I got like this poor dog down there, and I felt like I was just projecting, my sadness and whatever.
Right.
But, and I don't know if you remember Cooper, and I'm not trying to bring us down, but he died a few weeks ago. He was the ripe old age of 11.
Are you serious?
So yeah.
Oh, sorry.
He was my buddy because he made the move to Arizona with me. So he was a special guy, but yeah.
Sorry about that. That's terrible.
It's
it happens with
dogs. Dogs don't live as long as you'd like them to. Grandmothers live to 100 sometimes, though, so that's good.
Yeah, it's definitely the worst part of having an animal.
Yes,
they die. Yeah.
So. Yeah. But we're good here. So Well,
Christy, it's been awesome talking to you. I'm so proud that you had this awesome book. I mean, this is amazing, and I really can't stress enough that people really need to read this. And is it better to buy it from your own site because do you get like a bigger cut?
That would be great.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'll put that in
that supports more of me as an independent author. Yes.
Gotcha. Yeah. So I'll put that in the link in the description so people can go there.
Although Amazon reviews are great too. So I don't know. Just pick your
whatever's easier.
Yes, whatever's easiest for you. But yeah, I'm happy to support it in both ways. So it's good and yeah.
Awesome.
So I'm so appreciative that when I reached out very randomly and was like, "Hey, can I put you in my book? Are you okay with me doing that?" You were like,
I'm like, sure, go ahead. Yeah, I mean, I have a podcast that I do, so I don't know. Yeah, not that part.
Now we're both open books.
Yeah, exactly. So so as I mentioned before, you look healthy. You're doing an awesome job staying sober. It sounds like you're pretty much in the clear now. So that's fantastic, and you're happier than I've ever seen you. So it's awesome. So
yes, thanks.
Yeah, is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, I think this has been great and a very fun conversation. And we'll have to connect sometime. We'll have a sober reunion in Phoenix or something.
Yeah. But heck yeah! Well, I'm down. We'll have some Diet Cokes or something. Shirley Temple. Awesome. So for Christy Hughes, my name is Josh, and as always, thank you for being a friend.